So it was back to press conference duty for Eddie Howe today on the eve of what is going to be a huge week for Newcastle United. Partly, of course, due to the disappointing start to the season, and then, of course, what is set to come next week with Newcastle's first Champions League match in over 2 decades, when, of course, they travel to Milan to face AC Milan in the San Siro next week. I have to say, I spoke to Eddie Howe both in the press conference and in a one-to-one interview beforehand, an interview you'll be able to see on Sky Sports News on Saturday morning. That should run round about 10 o'clock in the morning, an extended interview with Eddie Howe. My takeaway from that was he was kind of very calm, and it was just kind of appealing for that from supporters and followers of the club as well, just to kind of take a moment to look back at what the club has achieved over the last sort of 18 months or so and enjoy the moment of what is set to come. So yeah, he seemed very calm in the interview. Again, in the press conference as well, he said he was asked a direct question whether he's affected by any of the noise or criticism around the club at the moment. He said, I'm immune to that. He said it's not something that bothers me. He says my biggest critic is myself, and I don't even take into account what anyone else thinks or feels about the way the team has started. But he did admit, he said, look, it wasn't the start that we wanted, and of the 4 performances, I got the impression the way he was talking, the one he wasn't happy with most of all was the Brighton game, but he said he had elements of positivity from the other 3 games. Obviously a perfect performance against Aston Villa, and then the Liverpool and Man City games. I think he felt on other days something could have gone for Newcastle in those matches. So yeah, you get the feeling he was kind of like looking back at the last 2 weeks where he's had an opportunity to spend 2 weeks, best part of 2 weeks, with 12 or 13 players who've been left behind. He's given them an opportunity to reset and go again, and he also alluded to the fact that those players who'd been away on international duty, the likes of the 2 Brazilians, Bruno Guimaraes and Joe Linton, and then of course Trippier and Wilson, who are away with England, Alex Isak scoring for Sweden, and then Sandro Tonali involved in positive performance for Italy. I got the impression from the way he was talking that these guys have come back in a good place. He said particularly Bruno Guimaraes, a positive experience for him starting both matches for Brazil, and he said he came back into the training ground yesterday with a spring in his step, and he's hoping that is a springboard that Bruno needs, as he said, to try and get back to his very best, because when he is at his best, he says he's the catalyst for Newcastle's good play. So perhaps it's just something like Bruno being taken away out of his usual surroundings at the training ground, away with Brazil, starts 2 games, and he comes back and things change. So that is the hope for Eddie Howe. Dan Burn I interviewed yesterday, and again that was an extended interview that went out on Sky Sports News this morning, and Dan Burn said he actually, in a perverse sort of way, enjoys these moments. He enjoys when people are questioning him, questioning the team, because he said throughout his entire career he's had to deal with adversity, he's had to try and prove people wrong, and he's done that up until now. So he quite enjoys these moments when your back's against the wall, people are maybe criticising yourself and the team, and you go out and prove them wrong. I also asked Dan about whether he's enjoyed or how he's found being moved back into centre back. He said, look, it has been tough, it's been testing, but despite that, he says it's still my best position, and if I'm needed there again, of course I'll play there. But my feeling is probably tomorrow against Brentford he'll shuttle back out to left back again, with Sven Botman coming back in. It's a difficult one in terms of team selection for Eddie Howe, because I think if he makes wholesale changes for tomorrow and the team win against Brentford, he'll probably feel he needs to do that again on Saturday and Tuesday against AC Milan, and I think what he'll want to do is play what he thinks is the strongest team against AC Milan. So I think there might be 1 or 2 little changes tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised if Sean Longstaff came back into the team. Sandro Tonali has got a little bit of a thigh issue at the moment, and he said he was scanned earlier on in the week and he's a slight doubt for tomorrow. So I think at this stage of the season, with so many games coming up, I think if someone like Tonali isn't 100%, he's more likely to sit out. So I've got a feeling Sean Longstaff will come back into the team tomorrow, and then Tonali, you would expect, if all going well, he would play against AC Milan in Italy on Tuesday night. I'd be surprised if he doesn't play that game. You can imagine it'd be a huge occasion for him. So yeah, no surprise to me if Sean Longstaff came in tomorrow, but I've got that one wrong already this season. And then just something about the news of Callum Wilson's new contract today, and one of the answers that Eddie Howe gave about Callum Wilson, he said, look, he's absolutely desperate to play. He almost swore in the news conference, Eddie, and said that look, he's desperate. It sounds like he's knocking at the manager's door to try and play. And he knows he's not happy that he's not playing. So I've got a little feeling that Wilson might come back into the lineup to play Brentford tomorrow, and Alex Isak will be kept for Tuesday night in Milan. It's getting to that stage of the season, okay, just only 4 games in, when he's going to have to start mixing it up. He hasn't so far. He's gone with the same 11, out with the injury to Sven Botman, but I do think he might make a couple of changes without making wholesale changes. He actually used that word, wholesale changes himself. He said, look, I don't want to make wholesale changes because don't fix what isn't broken. So he feels Newcastle are close to being where they were last season. He thinks they've had a bit of bad luck, but also feels like some bad decisions, and he even alluded to the fact that he felt that the performance against Liverpool spread into Brighton, and he thinks the players had a little bit of a hangover from that and understands why that happened. So the only performance he was fully questioning so far, as I say, was that one against Brighton last week. And I get the impression from speaking to Dan Burn yesterday and then Eddie Howe today that they're desperate to get out there as soon as they can and set that right. Howe said he would have loved a game the week after that, but of course they had the international week to contend with, and it's given them that opportunity to sit down, talk and reset. Those that have had some great training time, those that have been away largely have come back with positive experiences, and he feels that will stand them in good stead. So yeah, I think they go back to the normal back four tomorrow. Sven Botman should come back in. He's trained all week, Eddie Howe said. I actually saw him on the training ground exactly 2 weeks ago today before the Brighton game, going through a pretty rigorous individual session. I thought he would make that game against Brighton, but I think he felt a niggle towards the end of that and they decided it was best to leave him. He's had the best part of 2 weeks to get that right. I think he comes back in tomorrow. I would imagine Dan Burn shuttles back out to left back, and then, as I say, we'd be surprised if Longstaff doesn't come in. Got a feeling Callum Wilson starts up front. But listen, for you Newcastle United supporters watching this, you know, the exploits of last season has got you into this position of the Champions League. You'll be in Milan, many of you will be in Milan in just 2-3 days time. This is the prize for last season. I think it's important that everyone remembers that going into what is a huge week. And you know, I think both Eddie Howe and Dan Burn both said to me in the last 24 hours, despite Milan being huge, they actually feel the Brentford game's bigger because they know they need to get it right domestically to then give themselves a platform to go and play in Europe. And that is what I think will happen. I think if Newcastle get the win tomorrow, I think they will. I'm pretty certain Newcastle will go and win that game fairly comfortably, whether it's 2-0, 3-0, 3-1, whatever. I think they give them that platform to go out and enjoy themselves and express themselves in Milan next week. I think if they were to lose tomorrow, then things get difficult. I don't see that happening. I'm fairly confident that Newcastle will put things right, having spoken to a couple of the players and the manager in the last 24 hours. So let's see what tomorrow brings. One other thing I wanted to note was, look at this beautiful weather today. 10 years to the day for me since I made the journey from Scotland down to Newcastle, well, down to the northeast to become the northeast reporter for Sky Sports News. So been feeling a little bit sentimental today, just thinking about me driving down in my car exactly 10 years ago today. It was on the day of the Great North Run to start my job down here. Didn't know a single person, didn't have anywhere to stay, had to bunk in with a friend of a friend for a couple of weeks, not knowing what was to come. What I did think was to come was I thought there'd be lots and lots of European trips and Champions League matches. I'd dined out in that in the past, covering Rangers and Celtic in Scotland. Kind of thought it would be the same with Newcastle because they've been in Europe under Alan Pardew the previous year. We all know that's not been the case because, as we know, Newcastle have just existed under the previous regime. And but here we are. It's quite ironic that almost exactly 10 years to the day, and finally I'm going to get to cover my first European match for Newcastle next week in the San Siro, of course, in the stadium that hosted the semi-final last season between the two Milan clubs. So look, I'm really looking forward to travelling out to that on Sunday morning. I'll get there a day early and hopefully provide you guys with some updates ahead of the game and some behind the scenes access as well. I'll be with Milan during the day as well. And then hopefully we'll have some good content for you over in Milan, but I don't want to give too much away. Now, I know it is Milan Fashion Week. I'm going to have to put some better clothes on for this ahead of that. But yeah, 10 years ago today, where has my life gone? But the one thing that remains in Newcastle is the weather. It was like this the day I moved down here, and here we are again. But anyway, that's from me. That's all from me just now. I'll be back with another video tomorrow following the match against Brentford, where I'm going to be watching it in a very different setting tomorrow. All will be revealed then. See you soon.